Hello everyone and welcome to today's show with sportsbookreview.com. I'm your host Lee Martin, here to take a first look into UFC Fight Night Calvin Kattar versus Dan Ige. Joining me today we have MMA journalist James Lynch. Now before we get into any UFC talk, like always, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show. Now let's get to chatting. How are you today, James?
I am awesome. So good to be here to talk some fights with you. Very excited about this card.
Yep. I'm very into this card right now. Now let's just jump right into it, okay? So I'm going to start off with Calvin Kattar. Can you definitely just give me your best breakdown of him as a fighter?
Well, Calvin Kattar's improved tremendously over the last couple of fights. We know he's a pressure guy. He's a guy that will get in your face, and he's got knockout power. I mean, we saw that in his last fight against Jeremy Stephens. We saw that in the fight with Ricardo Lamas. This is a guy that is guaranteed violence, and that's why this is in the main event. And conversely, you know, obviously getting a guy like Dan Ige, it's going to be a fight of the night type performance for both guys. But with Calvin Kattar, you know, he is a guy that, you know, has a couple setbacks in the octagon, you know, lost to Renato Moicano, also lost to Zabit Magomedsharipov last year. But I mean, he's fighting tough guys, tough competition. And I think the biggest thing you got to look at in this fight is we could be seeing the winner of this fight potentially being a contender for the featherweight title in the near future, just because of how talented both fighters are. But Calvin Kattar, very game guy. And, you know, one of the, you know, he calls himself the part of the New England cartel. You know, he's definitely representing his state of Massachusetts very well. So we're really excited to see him in action here on July 15th.
Yeah, now let's move on over to the next fighter, Dan Ige. Can you break him down as a fighter?
Dan Ige is, I always sort of describe Dan Ige as like, if we could describe, you know, when you're talking about workers, like, you know, like a blue collar worker, like someone that puts in the hours and all that, that is Dan Ige. Like, I don't think Dan Ige was, you know, given any gifts or anything. He is just a pure hardworking fighter. And we've just seen so many improvements with him over the last couple of years. If you remember, he lost his UFC debut to Julio Arce, and he's been undefeated since then. And a lot of his fights have been close, but he's managed to find a way to get it done, including his last fight against Edson Barbosa, had to overcome a little bit of adversity and ended up pulling off a decision. I know a lot of people felt like he didn't win the fight, but here he is on a nice winning streak heading into the fight. He trains out of Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. You know, he left Hawaii years ago to go train there. It's really paid dividends for him as we've seen him really progress quite well in his career. And he's a guy as well that will get in your face. That is, you know, really going to make you earn that win. And I think Ige is absolutely a game opponent in this fight. And like I said, putting these two together, it's just perfect matchmaking here by the UFC. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Ige might be one of the first fighters from Contender Series to host to be in the main event for the UFC. So that's a pretty good honor for Dan Ige. Yep.
Now, as you broke down each fighter, let's go ahead and check out their odds. Now, via BetOnline, let's see. We have Calvin Kattar at -275 and Dan Ige +235. Can you give me your take on those pricings?
It seems about right here. Like I mentioned earlier, Calvin Kattar has fought the better competition if you look at his UFC run, and he also has some, you know, really notable wins as well. I talked about the Jeremy Stephens knockout in his last fight, but how about Shane Burgos? I mean, here's a guy that fought a couple weeks ago, showed an iron chin, and Calvin Kattar is still the only fighter in the UFC to finish Shane Burgos in the octagon. So that's a nice win for him as well. I mean, you just look at these opponents here: Zabit Magomedsharipov, Ricardo Lamas. He finished Chris Fishgold, fought Andre Fili in his debut where he was a big underdog and upset him here. So Kattar absolutely deserves to be the favorite fighter. Ige's fought some tough guys too, in Barbosa and Bektic in his last couple of fights. But if you look at the fights before that, Jordan Griffin, I mean, the level of competition just isn't the same. And I think too, Kattar's been a little bit more battle tested in the octagon. And there's just moments in his fights where you see him have that sort of X factor where he can get a notable finish. Whereas Ige, you know, he's got some finishes, but a lot of his fights are close. He doesn't go out there and, you know, get like a quick finish, but we've seen that with Kattar. So the line is absolutely where it needs to be. I'm looking at most sports books right now, and they're sort of saying the same thing, that Kattar's about a 2-1 favorite. I think the line's exactly where it needs to be.
Wonderful. Now, how do you think this fight will finish? Do you think it'll go the distance, be within the distance? Will there be a knockout or submission? What are your thoughts on the finish of the fight?
Well, that's the thing. Both of them have really great cardio, especially Calvin Kattar. I think people watched that fight against Zabit Magomedsharipov last year. If that went 2 more rounds, I think that could have potentially favored Calvin Kattar here. He's got amazing cardio, but so does Dan Ige. Very interesting to see both these guys potentially go the distance here. I don't see like an early finish from either guy. The way I sort of break down this fight is I think you'll see them just try and trade and see who the better striker is. And I think ultimately it will be Calvin Kattar. Now, the question is, can he finish the fight? I think it's possible. I think maybe a 4th or 5th round finish finish for Calvin Kattar is possible in this fight, just because of how durable Dan Ige is. Ige's never been finished in his career, but I do see Kattar's boxing just taking over as the fight goes, and him just landing those shots. Ige eventually, wearing out, and Kattar capitalizing in the later rounds and getting a late stoppage in this one. So my official pick for this one is Calvin Kattar by 4th round TKO.
There we go. I was going to ask you who your pick would be. So just to recap, Calvin Kattar in the 4th round. Correct? Calvin Kattar. So again, if you want to get Calvin Kattar, get on it via BetOnline. Calvin Kattar is -275 and Dan Ige is +235. If you want to get more odds, shop around, go to sbrodds.com. And if you want to also get some top analysts from our UFC experts, head on over to sbrpicks.com. And also, if you're not following James on Twitter, definitely give him a follow at Lynch on Sports. And also, if you want to follow SBR on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, definitely give us a follow at SBR Sports Picks. Now, thank you so much for your time today, James. Thank you for dropping knowledge. You're awesome. So, hopefully, we can have you again on the show. Until next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.